You feel that little chill in the morning air lately? The kind that makes you want to wrap both hands around your coffee mug before you step out onto the porch. Around this time of year, I see folks up and down the road doing the exact same thing. They wash out their empty plastic pots, they drain and coil up the garden hoses, and they snap a heavy brass padlock on the tool shed. They look at the calendar, figure the growing season is over, and decide the yard is just going to sleep for the winter. But I'll tell you a secret I didn't learn until I was well into my 40s, and I learned it the hard way. When you shut down your garden in September or October, you're walking away from the absolute best planting window God gives us. Most folks think spring is for planting, but think about what a new plant goes through in May. You stick it in cold, wet mud. A few weeks later, the summer heat hits like a hammer, the rain stops, and that poor little root system is fighting for its life. But in the fall, the air is cool, which means the leaves aren't stressing out in the sun. More importantly, the soil is still holding all that summer heat. It's warm, it's soft, and it is the perfect place for roots to stretch out and get settled before the ground freezes solid. Before we talk about putting specific things in the dirt, let's talk about the dirt itself and the weather we've been dealing with. It's been a funny few years, hasn't it? The weather just doesn't act like it did when we were growing up. We get these long, miserable hot spells where the ground cracks open like a dry kitchen sponge. Then, out of nowhere, we get a heavy downpour that washes half your expensive topsoil right into the street gutter. If you're on a fixed income, or even if you just respect the value of $1, you can't afford to keep going to the hardware store every May. You can't keep buying flat after flat of fussy, expensive hothouse flowers that just turn up their toes and die the second the weather gets difficult. And let's be honest with ourselves, our knees and our lower backs don't have the patience for high-maintenance gardens anymore. We need things that put their roots down deep, do the heavy lifting for us, and take care of themselves. I remember my grandmother's yard back in the early 70s. She didn't have fancy irrigation or expensive chemical fertilizers, but she had these tall, pale purple flowers with coppery, prickly centers just standing there, baking in the August sun, looking pretty as a picture. Purple cone flowers. Folks can grow these from zone 3 all the way down to 9. So whether you're up by the Canadian border or down in the deep south, they do just fine. The reason my grandmother loved them, and the reason I love them, is what happens underground. They have a heavy taproot. It goes way down deep into the earth, searching for moisture. Once they get settled in, they honestly don't care if it hasn't rained in a month. You plant them right now in the fall while the soil is accommodating. Next summer, when everybody else on your street is dragging a heavy tangled rubber hose around in 90-degree heat just to keep their petunias alive, you can just sit on the porch. You can sit there and watch the little yellow goldfinches land right on the dry seed heads of those cone flowers. No watering, no waking back, just peace and quiet. Now, this next one is something folks always seem to get wrong, and it costs them money every single year. People go to the big box store in the spring. They buy a flat of black-eyed Susans. They stick them in that cold spring mud I was talking about, and they wonder why half of them rot right at the stem. If you put them in now, in the autumn, they get tough. These are the cheerful yellow ones with the dark brown centers. They look like little suns, good for zones 3 through 9. The mistake people make is planting just one little pot by itself in a sea of wood mulch. Black-eyed Susans like to have friends. They want to spread out. If you let them, they spread nice and polite, and their leaves form a canopy that shades the ground. I won't lie to you and say they choke out every single weed. Don't believe folks who make those kinds of promises. But they surely suppress enough of them to save your knees from a lot of weekend pulling, and I'll tell you the real reason I keep them around. My grandkids love them. Kids today spend way too much time looking at screens and not enough time with dirt under their fingernails. When the grandbabies come over, you can let them cut a whole handful of black-eyed Susans for the kitchen table. You don't have to scold anybody for picking the flowers, because the plant will just turn around and make more. It's a forgiving plant, and we could all use a little more of that. You know, I learned this next lesson the hard way, and it cost me a few good plants over the years before I finally listened. It's a type of native milkweed. It gets these bright, fiery orange clusters late in the summer, tough enough for zones 3 to 9. Here's the trick though. You have to pick your spot and stick with it. Like the coneflower, butterfly weed grows a deep, stubborn taproot. Once it's in the ground, it throws an absolute fit if you try to dig it up and move it. I had an uncle who was always rearranging his garden like living room furniture. He tried to move a mature butterfly weed 3 times, and he killed it 3 times. Pick a spot out by the mailbox, or that one awkward corner of the yard where the soil is terrible and rocky. Don't buy bags of expensive compost to fix the dirt. Don't add a drop of fertilizer, just dig a hole and leave it alone. It actually prefers poor soil. Give it a little time and eventually the monarch butterflies will find it. They need milkweed to lay their eggs. There's a very quiet, very real kind of pride in seeing those orange wings show up in your yard, knowing you gave them a safe place to land and raise their young on their long trip south. We all want to leave this land a little better than we found it, and that's a mighty fine way to start. I always say, gardening is a lot better when you share the harvest, the secrets, and the headaches. If you've been enjoying these old stories and tricks today, I'd be glad to have you join us here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and pull up a chair. We've got plenty more to talk about as the seasons turn. Moving right along, here's one that always gives me a chuckle when I look at the neighbors. Every single spring, the deer come through my neighborhood like a vacuum cleaner. They eat the hostas right down to the nubs. They nip the blooming tops off the expensive nursery flowers. My neighbors get so mad they can't see straight, and they go spend $50 on stinky sprays that just wash off the very next time it rains. But those deer walk right past my yarrow. They won't even look at it. Yarrow has these soft, feathery green leaves that look almost like a fern, and flat tops of tiny flowers, usually yellow, white, or pink. It grows just fine anywhere from zone 3 to 9. It smells a little spicy. To you and me, it just smells like a dusty, pleasant summer afternoon. But to a deer or a hungry rabbit, it smells awful. You plant yarrow in the fall, and next year you let the plant do the guarding for you. Put it on the edges of your beds. You keep your money in your pocket, you save your temper, and you can actually enjoy your morning coffee without shouting at the wildlife. Plus, if you cut a few stems and hang them upside down in the kitchen, they dry beautiful and hold their color all winter long. Now, Most folks completely overlook this next one because it doesn't have big showy petals, and they think they only want flowers in their yard. It's a native grass called little blue stem. It's hard to believe a simple patch of grass could be interesting, but this one works harder than just about anything else in the dirt. During the summer, it's a calm, dusty blue-green color. It just sits quietly in the background. But when the weather turns cold in the fall, it turns a rusty, coppery red that looks real pretty standing up against a light morning snow. But the surprising part, the part that actually matters to homeowners, is what's happening underground. The roots on this grass go down 5 feet or more. With these heavy, violent downpours we've been getting lately, your topsoil washes away before you can blink. Put little blue stem on a slope or a bank or anywhere water rushes through your yard, and it holds the earth together like superglue. It's tough from zone 3 down to 9. It just stands there and does its job, year after year, saving your property from washing down the storm drain. And in the dead of winter, when the wind blows through the dried stalks, it makes this soft, rustling sound. It just sounds like home. But this next one might be my absolute favorite when the days start getting real short and the shadows get long. Around late October, everything in the yard is brown and tired. The trees are bare, the tomato vines look terrible and need to be pulled, and the yard is ready for bed. Then, right out of nowhere, the fall aster blooms. Some folks around here call it aromatic aster. It gets completely covered in these little blue and purple daisy-looking flowers. It's reliable. In zones a couple of years ago, the morning after our first hard frost, I looked over at the neighbor's yard, and all their fancy annuals looked like wilted black lettuce. My asters were standing tall, completely unfazed by the ice, and they were covered in late-season bees. Those poor bees were moving slow in the cold, but they were so grateful for something to eat before winter really set in. It makes you feel good, taking care of the little creatures when pickings are slim. It gives you something beautiful to look at when the rest of the world is turning gray. That brings me to the last plant I want to mention today, and it's one you can plant once and pass down for generations. Wild bergamot. A lot of folks just call it bee balm. It gets these ragged, funny-looking purple blooms on tall, square stems that look a bit like little fireworks going off. Zones 3 to 9, again. Now, let's be honest with each other. Some folks will try to tell you that native plants are magic and they never get sick. That's just not true. If we get a terrible, hot, muggy spell in July, the leaves on your bergamot might get a little powdery mildew on them. It happens. It's a fact of nature. But unlike those fussy hothouse hybrids you buy in the plastic pots that just give up and die at the first sign of trouble, the native bergamot shrugs it off. It might drop a few lower leaves, but it keeps right on blooming. And I'll tell you why you want it blooming. The hummingbirds go absolutely crazy for it. As we get older, we look for ways to make things easier on ourselves. You don't have to boil sugar water on the stove anymore. You don't have to stand at the sink scrubbing black mold out of sticky plastic bird feeders every 3 days. You just plant the bergamot. The birds will hover right outside your kitchen window, getting exactly what nature intended them to have. And the plant comes back free of charge every single year. So, if you're looking at an empty Saturday this coming weekend, do yourself a favor. Don't lock the shed just yet. Go get a few of these in the ground. When you do, I want you to remember 3 simple rules to save your body and help your plants. First, dig wide, not deep. Our shoulders and backs aren't what they used to be. You don't need to dig a hole down to China. Just make a wide, shallow bowl so the roots can breathe and stretch out horizontally. The plant will figure out how to go deep on its own time. Second, water them once, real good, and then let them learn. Give them a heavy drink to settle the dirt around the roots and get rid of air pockets. After that, don't baby them. Let those roots reach down and search for water themselves before the freeze sets in. That's how they get tough. And third, tuck them in for the winter. Lay down a couple inches of wood chips or even just chopped up fall leaves around the base. It acts like a winter blanket. Just make sure you keep the mulch pulled an inch or so away from the stem so the plant can breathe and doesn't rot. Nature provides the leaves for free, so you might as well use them. Gardening isn't about fighting the weather. It isn't about spending your retirement savings at the nursery. And it certainly isn't about having the fanciest yard in town just to show off to the neighbors. It's about planting a seed of hope for tomorrow. It's about sitting on the porch on a July morning, feeling the sun on your face, sipping a hot cup